Hello, elementary school students across America and on United States military bases around the world. It's time once again for Michael T. Mondak Reads. I am the eponymous Michael T. Mondak, and it is Friday. And at this every day, at the same time, I come to you virtually to read one picture book to you, your parents, and your teachers. But I can't do it without a little preview as to what I'll be reading. Here it is for this Friday. Does your school have the coolest group of kids? And will you do almost anything to make friends with them? And will they make you do things that you know that are wrong on a dare? Well, Piggy found herself in such a situation. And it's the basic storyline in a book titled Muppet Kids in Piggy Takes a Dare. A storyline written by Ellen Weiss and illustrated by Tom Brannan. Let's get started. Emily, Rosie, and Melissa were the prettiest, the most popular, and the neatest girls in school. Or at least Piggy thought so. Emily, Rosie, and Melissa all had the best outfits. Sometimes they came to school wearing the same color. Sometimes they all wore the same hairstyle. And they always sat together at lunch. They liked to sit by themselves and talk about the other kids. Emily lived next door to Piggy. Every day, Rosie and Melissa went over to Emily's house after school. Piggy wished she could go too, but they never asked her. Once in a while, they let Piggy walk home with them, but they didn't talk to her. They just talked to each other. What are you all wearing tomorrow? Piggy asked once. Maybe I could wear the same thing. Oh, you probably wouldn't have anything that would be right, said Emily with a yawn. Why do you want to be friends with them? Skeeter asked Piggy one day at lunch. They're so mean. They're not mean, said Piggy. They're cool. Yeah, said Janice, as cool as 3 ice cubes. But Piggy wasn't listening. That very day, she decided to do something brave. She walked right over to Emily, Rosie, and Melissa after school. I'd like to be your friend, she said. Can I? Emily, Rosie, and Melissa looked at each other for a long time. I don't know, said Rosie slowly. Do you think she could be in our group? I don't know, said Melissa. Her clothes are kind of hopeless. Well, Emily said at last, maybe, if she can do all the right things. Piggy was very happy. She was going to be in the cool group. She would get to sit next to them at lunch and everything. What do I have to do? She asked eagerly. First of all, said Emily, you'll have to get some new clothes. We don't like yours. Piggy gulped. She'd have to ask her mother. Second of all, said Emily, we will of course need to copy your homework every night. This didn't feel very good to Piggy, but she really wanted to be friends with the coolest girls in school. So that night, when she was done with all her homework, she took it over to Emily's house. Not bad, said Emily. We could use it. The next day, Melissa said to Piggy, we don't think we like your hair. You don't, said Piggy. No, we don't, said Rosie. We think you should dye it red. Piggy gasped. Red? Dye it red? I don't know I don't know how it will look. Emily's eyes narrowed, and she looked straight at Piggy. We dare you to do it, she said. The next morning, Piggy slipped into her seat just as the bell was ringing. She wore a kerchief on her head. Piggy, what happened to your hair? Skeeter whispered to her. Piggy blushed as red as her hair. It was supposed to be really light, she whispered. It was supposed to wash right out. I look so awful, and my mom is really mad. Emily looked at her from across the room and grinned. At lunch, Emily, Rosie, and Melissa let Piggy sit with them. All her old friends were looking at her and shaking their heads, but Piggy was at last sitting with the prettiest, coolest girls in school. That night, she went home and washed her hair 6 times until the red color was almost all gone. Piggy, said Emily on the way to school the next day, we've been thinking. If you want to be our friend, you'll have to do one more thing. What is it? Asked Piggy with dread. Oh, don't even ask her, Emily. She won't do it, said Rosie. She's probably too chicken, said Melissa. Piggy had sort of a cold feeling in her stomach. It was a bad feeling. What is it? She said again. Well, said Emily slowly, you know Mrs. Pritchett, who lives in that ugly old house at the end of Oak Street? Kind of, said Piggy. She knew which house it was anyway. It was way at the end of a dead-end street. The gate flapped in the wind and the paint was peeling off. Well, Mrs. Pritchett yelled at Rosie for breaking her window with a rock by accident. We hate her. She's a witch and her house is haunted. So what do I have to do? Piggy asked nervously. You have to go up to her house and paint Mrs. Pritchett is a witch on her front door, said Emily. It's what she deserves. But that's so mean, protested Piggy. I told you she's too chicken, said Melissa. Emily looked straight at Piggy and narrowed her eyes again. I dare you. I dare you to do it. And I double dare you, said Melissa. Piggy trudged home from school that day feeling a whole mess of tangled up feelings. She didn't feel good about painting awful words on somebody's door, but she wouldn't get to be with Emily, Rosie, and Melissa if she didn't take the dare. She would just have to do it. Piggy couldn't even eat the cookies her mother had left her in the kitchen. The next day it was the time to do it. Piggy rummaged around in her closet that had the art supplies and finally came out with a little jar of red paint and the smallest brush she could find. After all, Emily hadn't said how big the words had to be. She tucked the paint and brush in her pocket. Piggy walked toward Oak Street, praying that she wouldn't run into Skeeter. She didn't want Skeeter to ask her what she was doing. At last she was there. The house was even scarier than she remembered it. What if Mrs. Pritchett really was a witch? Piggy thought of going home and forgetting the whole thing. But then she remembered Emily's dare. She couldn't back out now. She took a deep breath and marched toward the house. Piggy opened the creaky gate and tiptoed up the walk. The front yard was full of weeds and tall grass. Now all she had to do was get up the front stairs quietly and she'd be at the door. Her heart was pounding. She stepped onto the bottom step and then the second one. At least the steps didn't make any noise. Gah! Suddenly there was a splintering crash. The wooden step gave way under Piggy and her foot went right through. Piggy let out a scream as she felt her legs shoot downward. She was stuck. Before Piggy could get herself unstuck, the front door opened. Standing in the doorway was Mrs. Pritchett. Oh, my stars, she gasped. Let me help you out of there. Piggy's eyes filled with tears. Her leg hurt. And what if Mrs. Pritchett really was a witch? Maybe when she was just pretending to be nice, and when she got Piggy in her clutches, it was too awful to think about. Mrs. Pritchett came rushing down the stairs and gently helped Piggy to free her leg. Oh, I knew I should have gotten that step fixed, she said, more to herself than to Piggy. I knew it. No, it was my fault, said Piggy. No, 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 dear, said Mrs. Pritchett, blowing her enormous nose in a handkerchief. Of course it's not your fault. It's just that everything needs fixing, and I'm all alone here. Piggy looked down at her leg. It wasn't bad. It was just scraped and scratched. Oh, you must come in, dear. I'll call your mother, said Mrs. Pritchett. She helped Piggy into the house, which was rather dark inside, but had some nice old furniture. Please don't call my mother, said Piggy. I'm really okay. I don't want to worry her. How would she explain to her mother why she'd been on Mrs. Pritchett's steps to begin with? Mrs. Pritchett sat Piggy down in her living room, went to her kitchen, came bustling back with soap and water and clean bandages. She also had a little tray with some cookies and a cup of wonderful smelling tea. It's raspberry tea, dear, she said. It'll make you feel much better. In a little while, Piggy's leg was clean and bandaged. She had drunk all her tea, and she indeed felt much better. I'm sorry I caused you all this trouble, said Piggy sheepishly. I think I should be going now. You really feel all right, said Mrs. Pritchett. And I'm going to get that step fixed right away. By the way, she added, why were you coming to see me anyhow? Piggy didn't know what to say. I made a mistake, she said quietly at last. Yes, I suppose you wanted the house next door, said Mrs. Pritchett. There are some children there, I think. Please stop by another time, though. Now go and find your friends. Piggy thanked Mrs. Pritchett. When she got to the front gate, she waved to the old lady. On the way home, she thought, yes, I will go and find my friends, my real friends. Piggy was happy to find Skeeter at home, doing homework with Janice. They smiled when they saw her. I thought you had new friends now, said Skeeter. No way, said Piggy. She plopped down in a chair. Skeeter, she said, did you ever take a dare? Said Skeeter. Taking dares is dumb. I do what I want to do, not what somebody else dares me to do. Now I took a dare once, said Janice. My big brother dared me to eat some pepper. Boy, was I sorry. I'm never taking a dare again. You know what, said Piggy? Tomorrow at school, I'm going to tell Emily, Rosie, and Melissa that they can just keep their friendship. They're bad friends. That's a good idea, said Skeeter. I think you should do it. In fact, I dare you to do it. Then she laughed and ducked the pillow that Piggy had thrown at her. And that, boys and girls, ends the story for this Friday. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll be back with you at the same time on the same channel on Monday. Goodbye for now.